You may have heard of the Apostle John in the Bible. Who am I kidding? He wrote 15% of the New Testament, 5 whole books, 1 gospel, 3 letters, and the Revelation. His work is included among the earliest known manuscript of any identifiable portion of the New Testament, and I want to tell you the story of his life. As Andreas Kostenberger notes in his introductory material to his commentary on John, we must get to know the man in order to understand what he wrote. So, where might we begin to learn about the life of John?
A Bible!
I have an idea. My first inclination is to sketch an outline of John's life using this helpful resource called the Tyndale Bible Dictionary. You can find Bible dictionaries from pretty much anyone, but I like this particular one because of the scholarship behind it. It's relatively middle of the road and generally has all of the information I'm looking for. Now, they don't sponsor this video, but I do have affiliate links to their product in the description below, along with some other affiliate links. That helps fund the production of the very video we're making together. Just real quick, to be honest, I cannot believe the kind of stuff on John's life I found while reading through this Bible dictionary. By the end of it all, the story is outlined in such a way that, at least for me and I hope for you, truly brings all of John's writings, his gospel, the epistles, the Revelation, into the proper light and begins to make sense of everything he wrote. So, let's begin. John the Apostle. This particular Bible dictionary opens by giving us John's nickname, the disciple whom Jesus loved. It has a nice ring to it and fits in with some of the other videos that I've made. So let's remember that because it may make a good subtitle. It also gives us a starting clue as to what the video might be about. Love. Knowing simply what I know, John writes a lot about love. In fact, he's famous for saying that God is love in 1 John 4:8. That might be a good theme to create the story around. As we go on, the Tyndale Bible Dictionary tells us John's origin story. It's very helpful. It says he's born to Zebedee, according to Mark 1:19. But his mother remains unknown. Yet, there is mention of the mother of Zebedee's children in Matthew 27:56. But Mark seems to replace the same phrase with the name Salome in Mark 15:40. This is pretty good evidence of John's mother's name being Salome, the sister of the Virgin Mary, which would be important because that means John is Jesus' cousin. But even though we don't know all of the details exactly, we don't want to ruin the narrative flow of the complete story video. So we're just going to assume that John's mother's name is Salome. The outline of John's life that they give in the Bible dictionary is pretty quick here. He's called by Jesus in Matthew 4:21, fishing with his father. Now, I know that John was pretty young when he was called, so I'll try to work that into the setting of the story. Then, the book just mentions how John probably got closer to Jesus as he followed him around Galilee. Fair enough. The Transfiguration is mentioned, and then a few of the miracles Jesus took John to see. Now, I know that they're condensing this story. They missed the wedding at Cana, for instance. So, I'm going to use Thomas and Gundry's A Harmony of the Gospels to get a fuller picture of John's travels with Jesus. I have it here. There it is. I'm going to add some of the missed information from this book, but I don't want to give everything away just yet, so I'll let you know when it's completed. Let me just say, though, that I am getting really excited for how this whole story is coming together. John's life has specific plot points that make sense of not only his life, the theme we're setting up, but also all of his writings. And that's really exciting to me because it helps me get to know the Bible better. For example, we have some clear names for moments throughout a character's story that help tell the story as a whole. One of those moments is called the inciting incident. It's the moment where everything changes for the character and the story really begins. For John, this is going to be when Jesus calls him while he's fishing with his father and brother. Then we have something called rising action, those moments where tension builds and it helps us to see the theme and the plot more clearly. In this case, John has a couple of really good moments of rising action. Think about like when he wants to call fire down from heaven on the Samaritans and Jesus rebukes him. That's a moment where John's character begins to change and be shaped to become more like Christ. And much like my facial hair, the Tyndale Bible Dictionary moves on. I don't know, my computer crashed. I lost like half the video and just piecing it together now. Anyway, the Bible Dictionary moves on and begins talking about why John's other nickname, besides the disciple whom Jesus loved, was the Son of Thunder with his brother James. Apparently, some from the early church thought that this was a good thing. They said that John was going to be a witness as loud as thunder. But this does create a bit of a tension here. On the one hand, John has this explosive edge to him throughout the Gospels. And on the other hand, John is this quiet boy from Bethsaida who lets Peter do all the talking. Okay, so this has to be the story then, right? Stories are always driven by characters who need something and then there are obstacles in their way to getting what they need. So in this case, the boy John needs to grow up from being the son of thunder to becoming the disciple whom Jesus loved. That's the transition that I want to showcase. But the key is figuring out what in the world could have caused such a change. And my initial guess, again, if we're going to create a compelling story, is that the structure of Jesus' love caused John to grow up into the disciple whom Jesus loved, like a vine growing on a trellis. Plus, that works extra well, since it's in John's gospel where we get the image of Christ as the vine, and we abide in him as branches and grow up in love. So, over the course of the video, we're going to need to see the boy become softened into the man of love. The climax of this story, then, is probably going to be the crucifixion, since 1, John was the only disciple present at the crucifixion, and 2, that is where God's love is most powerfully displayed. The fact that God would become man in order to die on a cross so that sins might be forgiven is the height of what it means to love, at least according to John in John 15:3. But John's story is far from over even after the crucifixion. After the crucifixion, there's Pentecost, which is a pretty standard plot point for all of the disciples. And then after Pentecost, it sounds like John maybe then travels with Peter for a while. I like this image because as the Tyndale Bible Dictionary moves on, it moves on into these old church legends, and old church legends has it that John ends up in Ephesus. At least that's the tradition from Polycrates and Irenaeus. There's a few other guys who say something different, but just to keep the narrative moving in the video, let's just assume he ends up in Ephesus. He may have even gotten there with Peter, since Peter did some missionary work around there after Paul, according to church tradition, but I would need to note that down because I'll need to find a source to look into that more. But I also know that John was exiled to Patmos, right? I mean, he says that in Revelation. Apparently, he was exiled there because he was preaching in Ephesus, and then he comes back eventually to Ephesus under house arrest, and that's where he dies. That's good to know. That would about set an outline for the story of John, but we're not done yet. In fact, we're really just getting started. We have an idea, an outline of this man's story and how it all fits together because of Christ's love, but the question is that true? Actually, I think that it would be more meaningful to craft a story that reflects the very themes of John's own writings. So what's the heart of John's writing? Something that connects all of them together. Okay, stick around for the next episode, because there we're going to unpack some of the major themes that are found throughout John's writings. Using commentaries and other biblical materials, I'm going to give you a hint. It isn't actually Christ's love that we're going to structure the video around. I think I was wrong. There are a handful of themes to choose from, and the one that we're going to decide to go with is perhaps more beautiful, more gospel-centric than love, if that's even possible. But stick around, wait and see. This is Bible Unbound. We'll see you next time.